and then heard the sound later. The build up to the momentous event was like the execution and secrecy of the Allied D-Day landing in 1944. Monday, August 5th, 2019 will be a red letter day in the modern history of India. The act of making Article 370 useless and revoking the Articles 35A was perhaps a most significant moment for the Indian nation. If any government, I say any government in the last 70 years, had the will to take the decision, it was the current NDA government under the great leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. No other political party in the country would have ever thought about, they will have the political will and the moral courage to do so, even if they had an absolute majority in the parliament. Over the last 7 decades, Article 370 and 35A had become sacred with a halo around them that seemed to give them inconsistent importance for no practical reason. It did not matter that they had outlived their utility and were hindering development of the state despite huge funds coming from the center. The common people of the state were denied growth opportunities, while the self-proclaimed custodians of Jammu Kashmir, mainly the three families and their proteges with political clout, amassed huge wealth and personal assets, while offering these articles as a fig leaf to the gullible, illiterate Muslim masses who were indoctrinated using the fanatic and radical Wahhabi Islam. Hugely comparable to the 1971 Dhaka surrender or the 1970 Pokhran atomic moment. It was, if not larger than both in terms of securing the nation and kicking the anti-nationals in their teeth, if not somewhere else. This is your host, Vidyabhushan Dar, Director, Indo-Canadian Kashmiri Forum, and the Chapter Director for Canada for the Global Kashmiri Pandit Diaspora, for welcoming you all to celebrate the first anniversary of what I call the final amalgamation of all Indian states, realizing the dream of the Iron Man Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. Gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, I have with me an august panel of thinkers, journalists, writers, policymakers, and TV hosts to discuss and debate the abrogation of Article 370 and 35A and the way forward and what it means to the people of Jammu and Kashmir, particularly the Kashmiri Hindus who were ousted by the radical Islamic terror in the year 1990. I'm pleased to introduce my august panel, Dr. Bikram Lamba, usually referred to as an open encyclopedia and an icon of the South Asian community, the well-known versatile TV commentator, broadcaster, and writer, Dr. Bikram Lamba. Dr. Lamba, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Dan Boatman, the youngest but the most vocal. Dan is the communication coordinator of the Canadian Anti-Semitism Education Foundation, CAEF, and host of popular TV show on Tag TV, The Uninterrupted. Tariq Fatah, the best-selling Pakistani-Canadian journalist and author of many best-selling books and a very famous TV personality with millions of followers in the Indian subcontinent and North America. I personally, along with my dad, are huge fans of Tariq Bhai for his unconditional whistleblowing. We owe it to him for a new age India where we need to bring the real history to the world written with the Hindu blood by the looters and barbarians. It was Tariq Fatah who jolted Indians out of their consciousness and slumber to remove the name of a road in Delhi named after a barbaric Mughal emperor who had vowed to annihilate all Hindus from the face of earth, starting from my birthplace, Kashmir. Welcome, Tariq Bhai. Tom Quiggin is a former intelligence officer who served in Bosnia. Following uniformed service, he worked for the International War Crimes Tribunal, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and Nanyang Technological University in Singapore. Author of the famous Quiggin Report. Welcome, Tom. Tahir Aslam Gora is a Pakistani-Canadian broadcaster, editor, publisher, translator, and writer of fiction and non-fiction, and founder of the Tag TV Canada. Article 370 was the most shameful article which suppressed the aspirations of the non-Muslims of a state and was almost communal, misogynistic, anti-Dalit, anti-minority, anti-transgender, and LGBTQ in its dispensation. I can hear the collective sigh of relief in Dogras, Kashmiri Hindus, and the Buddhists of Ladakh. The abrogation of these draconian articles has wiped many tears in the state shed over the last 70 years by a few generations. This law had turned them into virtual slaves of a communal Muslim Sultanate of Kashmir, who had no shame or fear in their partisan approach to this minuscule and the misrule studied with massive loot of the state exchequer. So I start with the show. I am thankful to Global Kashmiri Pandit Diaspora and Indo-Canadian Kashmiri Forum for giving me an opportunity to celebrate along with these luminaries. My first question is to Tahir Goraji. He has been diligently working on Kashmir since long, and I'm proud to share with the viewers that he was the first TV journalist anywhere in the world who gave a stage to the displaced Kashmiri Hindus to speak about their genocide and the forced exodus at the hands of Jihadi Brigade in Kashmir way back in 2010 on his TV show Bila Takalluf with Tahir Gora. Gentlemen, this show created ripples that the jihadi forces active in Canada were forcing the promoters of the TV channel to take it off the air, YouTube, and other channels. Because truth, as they say, naked truth is so bitter. Welcome to the talk show, Tahirji, and I'd like to thank you on behalf of Kashmiri Hindu diaspora in Canada for your unconditional support all these years. The world knows more than something about our genocide, all because of you and Tag TV. Now the draconian articles have been abrogated, and we celebrated it then, and we are celebrating it now. You have done a series of programs in the last 1 year showing what has changed in Kashmir. Tell us, what has changed in Kashmir in the last 12 months? What has changed in India in the last 12 months? And the subcontinent and its repercussions on the world order? Tahirji.
Thank you very much, Vidyaji, and thank you very much all co-panelists. After abrogation articles 35A and 370, we are seeing Kashmiris and Bhartis still struggling with two viruses, one terrorism virus and second COVID-19. And both come from outside. One come from Pakistan and one come from China. And bravely, Kashmiris, Bhartis are fighting with both virus, and I'm pretty confident they would defeat both. In terms of progress Kashmir made during the past 1 year, as we understand, after the abrogation Article 370 and 35A, there was a fear of terrorism spillover as well as backlash. Because that was the decision made by Prime Minister Narendra Modi government, a very courageous decision and step forward. The world thought that there would be mass riots and there would be terrorism spillover. But despite all those challenges, despite infiltration of Pakistani terrorists into Kashmir, the world has observed nothing significant really happened in that part of the world. And that revealed the fact that there is no terrorist elements within Kashmiri diaspora. All terrorism, what the world was observing for the past 60, 70 years, coming from Pakistan. I understand that they somehow managed to create sleeping cells in Kashmir. But if Pakistani pipeline is drained, is that cut off, then there is no chance of terrorism in Kashmir. Now we see Kashmiri living in both territories of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh are dealing all those challenges. Kashmiri girls are manufacturing millions masks and PPE to counter coronavirus. New medical college, hospitals, roads, highways, tunnels, airports, and latest medical facilities are emerging all across both union territories. I would like to mention one joint Indo-Pak management report recently came out that says that joint Indo-Pak Management Institution study reveals contrasting picture of lifestyle in Jammu Kashmir, Ladakh, and Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. A recent study conducted jointly by Professor Dheeraj Sharma, Director of the Indian Institution of Management, and Professor Farah Arif of the Lahore University of Management Sciences, has revealed interesting facts. One, 4 out of 5 people in both the Ladakh and Jammu regions, and nearly 7 in every 10 in Kashmir stated they were happy with their lives and believed life was better than it had been in their parents' generation. Nearly 3 in 4 people were pleased with the governance of their region, particularly the education institutions, healthcare facilities, infrastructure development, and development opportunities available to them. Barely one fourth in the first two locations and one third in the third location claim to have any intention of possibly leaving their homeland to other locations. In Pakistan, on the other hand, every second person and 4 out of every 5 persons in Gilgit, Baltistan, and POK reported that they were not satisfied with their lives. Almost the same number stated that life had been better in their parents' generation and had deteriorated since more than half the people in Pakistan administrator Kashmir were not happy with their government. In Gilgit Baltistan, this was even higher. 7 in every 10 were unhappy with their government. Their those respondents had the negative answer regarding their satisfaction with the education, healthcare, employment, and infrastructure in their regions. So this is the difference we can clearly see while comparing POK and to union territories in Indian side. So there is a huge, I would say in the end, I would sum up, there's a huge development despite COVID-19, despite terrorist virus, and I am pretty confident in coming years, situation would be very great and very vibrant for actual Kashmiris, I would say, for true Kashmiris living in Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh.
Thank you, Tahir. Thank you so much for the elaborate, with statistics and data. I mean, being a Kashmiri myself, I'm telling you, 30 years back, Kashmir had like the highest earning, among the Indians in terms of like, the lifestyle, medical facilities, and education till university level was literally free. It was all subsidized by the government of India and the local government. I mean, we were baffled ourselves, like when people were talking about azadi. What kind of azadi? Like, you had all the facilities, you control the government. The majority of the majority of the Muslim people, they had the business with them. They had the control of the entire tourism industry with them. They had free education, free medical facilities. Like, it was literally what we call a jannat on the earth, or the paradise on earth. And still, because it was nothing else, what I always call a pan-Islamic moment. Now, I asked Dr. Lamba, Dr. Saab, you have seen and done it all at the Lithium's Delhi, North and South Block. Tell me your views. Why Article 370 was thrusted on the people of India, despite the fact that it was rejected by none other than the father of the Constitution, Dr. Bhimrao Babasaheb Ambedkar. So tell us, like, take us back to the history. Like, the masses want to still know why it was basically thrusted upon the Indians. Dr. Lamba.
Dr. Lamba, we are not able to hear you. No, there is no voice.
Can we take him on the phone? I'll take him on the phone. Dr. Lamba, I'll take you on the phone. We will hear you basically. Just pick up your call. We may not see you, but we will hear you. Dr. Lamba, do you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Well, as I was saying at that time,
Stop it. I think you.
I can hear you, Dr. Saab. But it is continuing with the with.
Oh my God. Stop it. And let's move to someone else so that.
Also, can I call you on your landline?
No, उनको ना थोड़ा उनका लैपटॉप का उनका जो है ना स्पीकर बंद करना पड़ेगा because जो
Dr. Saab,
How can he shut off the speaker?
no, just mute actually the laptop को
just mute the speaker, Dr. Saab.
साउंड बंद कर दीजिए अपने लैपटॉप का
This is unbelievable.
Doctor, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
It's the same thing.
Amazing, man. Sir, move on.
Yeah. Dr. Saab, I apologize. Like we had to look at I'll move on to the next speaker. My apologies. It's a technological glitch. Next question is to the indomitable, the fearless Tariq Fatah. Tariq ji, it has been 1 year now. Tell us, a lot has happened in the last 1 year, much against the will and the wishes of the chest-beating naysayers. Tell us why the state reorganization was necessary. And my other extended question to you is rather tricky. Indian armed forces have killed more than 100 Pak-supported subversives, terrorists in the year alone, but equally lost a lot of lives, including army and civilians. What more measures should the BJP government take to nip this evil into the bud completely? Or do you think it's not that easy? And Kashmir has been the bread and butter of all the regimes in Pakistan, whether military or civilian. And they won't let this cash register stop ringing. And on top of that, China's ambitious plans in POK are under threat by repeated mention by our top leadership of taking the area back for it being the Indian land forcibly under the Pak and Chinese occupation. Tariq Saab.
Well, to be fair, it wasn't an easy part of our independence in August 1947 when the state of Jammu and Kashmir was invaded by what Pakistan later produced very effectively in Afghanistan were the Taliban of the time, which was the Pashtun tribesmen who entered the state of Jammu and Kashmir, and including Captain Brown of the Gilgit-Baltistan, who handed over the territory by signing a document to a colonel in Peshawar who was very happy because the departing British government was afraid of the Red Army just north of the border of Afghanistan. So this is the perspective within which it took place. And the ascension of the state of Jammu and Kashmir to the Republic of India was not respected, which was an option to all princely dominions in the state, whether it was Bhopal or Hyderabad or Khairpur or Bahawalpur in states that joined Pakistan, or like Swat that joined Pakistan. Elsewhere, there are 500 of these states. However, where I feel mistakes were made were essentially to placate the fears that India would somehow be seen as a Hindu nation. And in the background of the 1940s or 50s, the word Hindu had literally become a four-letter word. So if you were a Hindu, you were somehow considered backward, you burnt brides, you had a caste system, and very effectively in the last 100 years before independence, after 1856, despite people, Vikanda, going to the United States and speaking at the great Chicago speech that he gave, the impression left was that we Indians were seen simply as various versions of Mahatma Gandhi wearing lungis and having nothing else to wear. And this consolidated, in a way, where Mr. Jinnah was able to put across himself as a very well-dressed, suited, cigar-smoking, secular person who didn't know that you had to take shoes off in a mosque until told by Jawaharlal Nehru. These were the complex issues that were taking place, but the invasion of Jammu and Kashmir was not resisted by the Indian state of the time. The regiments that went to Srinagar certainly saved the city from mass slaughter. I often refer to this book over here, written by the Pakistani general who led the army, Major General Akbar Khan, who details how they plundered the state of Jammu and Kashmir, and their eyes were fixated on the fair and lovely women of Kashmir that they wanted to rape and take along back with them. This was stopped by the Sikh regiment, I think, that was in Srinagar. But no Indian government after that was willing to stake anything to offend the vote bank politics after the 1952 election, in which repeatedly the Congress was winning, and the Muslims who had not yet migrated to Pakistan from UP, Bihar, Hyderabad, Bengal, Maharashtra, who were instrumental in creating Pakistan, stayed back. And Prime Minister Nehru had to present the position that it is India that represents Indian subcontinent's Muslims, not Pakistan, which meant that the 12% of the population had a veto on 80% of the population who were told, just be quiet. If you even utter the word Hindu, you will be seen as backward and poor. But being a Muslim meant you would have the support of about 50 countries. So India was in that very tough position, even during the non-aligned movement, even when President Nasir was involved with President Tito and Sukarno from Indonesia, the Pancila movement, that they could not do anything to offend the blackmail, or which we call the sword of Damocles on the head of the country, that, oh, they are actually anti-Muslim. And the Muslim leadership of India, not just Kashmir, the Kashmiri Muslim leadership was interested in power and money. The Muslim leadership of northern India was interested in re-establishing their dream of having a Mughal empire again in New Delhi. And that is how this played out. If you recall, in 1965, when Pakistan invaded Jammu and Kashmir, again violating international law by putting military soldiers in civilian uniform and dressing them up as Kashmiri fighters who couldn't speak Kashmiri, and you know, they
were caught.
They were caught. It was Kashmiri Muslims who handed over these Pakistani soldiers to the Indian army, and then the Pakistan army attacked from Chamb and Joria sector to cut off Kashmir. But even at that time, when the Uri sector, where Indians had crossed it at Tashkent, you gave back everything. As a result, Prime Minister Shastri had that heart attack and he died over there. There are many stories about it. But just imagine that even in 71, when you defeated the Pakistan military comprehensively, you had 90,000 POWs. You allowed all the war criminals of Bangladesh and gave them back to Pakistan. And Mr. Bhutto was able, with his daughter, to get the entire Indira Gandhi establishment enamored by their style, the cigar and playing a snooker, and how lovely that they gave back everything that was won by Sam Manekshaw and General Jacobs and all these. One on the battlefield was given away by Mr. Kaul and other people because, oh, the new Pakistani leadership is so fair and lovely. Essentially, you had lost self-respect of yourself, and instead of dictating to Pakistan that you are surrendered, get out of Gilgit-Baltistan, withdraw back to the region that you invaded. They signed the Shimla Treaty and said, oh, well, at least now we will just talk within ourselves, one to one. It's a mutual situation, not realizing that Pakistan had the upper hand. And even till today, at the UN Human Rights Council, it is Pakistan that wins the votes. Pakistan has already 50 members of the Islamic Council doing what they have to do, and India stays alone. And India was forever ashamed of its Hindu past. So despite the fact that Mohenjo-daro and Harappa and Takshila was on the Indus River and the Indian civilization, the Indian education minister, Abul Kalam Azad, Maulana, informed the entire two generations that we have nothing to do with this, that you are Indians. Despite the fact you gave up the Indus River to Pakistan, there is no, just forget about it. You even forgot about Sindh, which is in your national anthem. You don't talk about it. You think Sindh means a few billionaires running major companies in. So it is only the government of Narendra Modi. I might not have voted for him. I'm left of center. But I'm talking about how it worked out. He focused essentially on putting the Pakistanis on the back foot by insisting that Gilgit-Baltistan is sovereign Indian territory. But I can tell you that we are in such a mess in India that at JNU, in a class of 200 students, I couldn't get one student to differentiate between Baltistan and Balochistan. Not one. And these were students' graduate program of South Asian studies with the professor sitting in the class. They had never heard the word Baltistan. So if your education ministry is thoroughly infiltrated by people who essentially are Pakistanis, as I keep repeating, India has more Pakistanis than Pakistan. Because these are the people who want to change the system from within and take over the whole notion of Ghazwa-e-Hind. People in Pakistan don't know about it. But every Indian mullah is clear what he wants. The destruction of every Hindu temple, the slaying of every living Hindu till he is wiped out, and then these two tribes that will emerge from under the earth. You might not have heard of this Muslim belief.
That's why.
No, Hajuj and Majuj, these two tribes that will come out from under earth and swallow up every infidel. That is you and Daniel over here. Maybe they will spare me out because I might be a coward and say, oh, please let me go. I was just doing this because the Indians were paying me money. But don't share that. The fact remains that you were damaged at your birth. If you like the women who used to be forced to wear tiny shoes so that they would look nimble in certain countries, Indians were had steel caps framed on their head so that they would never be able to think of what they have lost and consider defense as the mechanism. This is the only prime minister since Shastri, and it's quite a match. Shastri's chest was mere 12 inches. This guy is 56 inches, right? They both had the same thought. Both had from different political parties. But they said Lahore is the city of India. It is the city founded by the sons of Ram, Kesh and Love, which is Kasur and Lahore. And both do not have a single Hindu living in them. It is like Mecca without Muslims. And Indians don't know. So who are you going to blame about this? So my suggestion is, if I was there in New Delhi, that until and unless Pakistan is disintegrated into its composing nationalities, India will not have a day of rest ever. Your objective should be to make sure that the mistake made in 1948, when Indian leaked out a memo that Balochistan wanted to join India, because for the Urdu speaking Muslims of India, the Baloch were some, there was a contemptuous view that people who couldn't speak Urdu were not good Muslims. So Punjabis like me or Tahir Gora or Pashtuns or Sindhi, who are also fighting for the freedom from Pakistan, or Baloch, they were the riffraff. And in the eyes of Maulana Azad, they were riffraff because they abandoned Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan. A Congress government in the Northwest Frontier province was abandoned, and the Congress walked away. Can you imagine the hundreds of thousands of people who worked with the Congress in what is today India? What happened to them? In the words of Bacha Khan, you left us to the wolves.
Dogs.
No, wolves.
Wolves.
Gidar was the word, not kutte. Gidar.
Bediye.
भेड़ियों के हिसाब से, the wolves. So India has to do two things as the next step. 370 is done. Let's not gloat about it. Pakistan will whimper about it. You can't win this on the UN or the in Geneva Human Rights Commission. You don't have Hindu nations to support you. The president of Suriname might take the oath of office in Sanskrit, but I can tell you nobody in India will take that, because everyone is ashamed of their past. Mauritius, Trinidad, Guyana, you have more people pro-India there than your NRIs in the United States, because every Indian wants to get an MBA and a fair and lovely wife. That's it. You want nothing else. So even at an anti-Chinese demonstration, there were Tibetans and Pakistanis over there demonstrating against China. There was not a single Indian in the city. Even today, there's a demonstration at 1 o'clock, and I can bet you there will be no Indians, because all the Indians have been made to believe is money matters and marriage matters. Nothing else matters. So you, even despite you have 1% of India's Punjabi being the fourth language of Canada, we only have Khalistanis who are doing this. The point is, India needs to act in Balochistan by allowing at the least it can do is allow a Baloch human rights office in New Delhi, if not a government in exile. Number two, Gilgit-Baltistan is sovereign Indian territory today. Any country not recognizing that should have nothing to do with India. Pakistan should be declared a state sponsor of terrorism, and the need of India for cheap cement and onions should go away. You are buying cement in India from cement produced by the Pakistan military. But because it is cheap, you do it. Why don't you shut the border? Why do you not stop the strange cock and rooster dance that takes place at Wagah? Why don't you do it near Khulna, so that Bangladesh and India, who are friends, they can have this at their border? Why do you do it with an enemy? So I don't want to keep on, but self-respect can only be achieved when you do not consider the word Hindu as a four-letter word. Ayodhya on the 5th will be the place where the Ram temple will be built. It will be the first anniversary of the abrogation of 370. And August 5th will also be, by the way, my 50th anniversary in journalism. So कौन सा दिन होता है वो नेक शगुन वाला दिन है.
Thank you, Tariq sir. Thank you so much.
Please, take care.
Tariq sir, I thank you so much for such an elaborate description of like the past and like what we have been doing. But I'm sure that you'll agree with me that a lot has happened in the last 4 or 5 years since the Narendra Modi government has come up. The nationalism and I will call it a revival of the Hindu nationalism. It has come up, and we can see it happening. Particularly just a few days back when the new education policy was declared, things are changing.
I give you one response.
Yeah, please go ahead.
You cannot fight hatred with hate.
True.
The answer to Islamic hatred of the Hindu is to walk away from it and expose the hate monger. The moment you start responding by making fun of Islam and Prophet Muhammad, you work on their territory and you contribute to their logic. The issue of Indians is that Bharat Mata ki Jai. If you can't say that, you better migrate to Somalia, or I can even recommend Fiji, or maybe British Guyana or someplace. But in the borders of Bharat, Bharat Mata ki Jai, if you don't like it, get the F out, because we didn't invite you to come and invade and rape us. Everyone's talking of the issues of plunder and rape and my territory and my life matters. How on earth can a self-respecting Indian have a main street in Delhi called Lodi? I was instrumental in getting Aurangzeb out of the way, but your whole country, all of UP is filled with names of, there is even a place in Delhi called Ghaziabad, which means that's the place where Muslims killed the Hindus and yet live to tell the story. And you have prime, how much can I catch Indians by the ears, like my mother used to pull mine and say, wake up, this is not, this is Ashoka Road.
It's happening, Tariq Sahib, it's happening. Thank you so much. Jan, I'll come back to you. Like, this is a connecting question. Unfortunately, we have lost links with Lambaji, and Tom is not able to connect to us. I'll go back to Tahir Gora. Tahir Sahib, just tell us, a little bit about the history, like, for the benefit of a lot of viewers who don't have basically the clue why Article 370 and the 35A was basically thrusted upon the Indian masses, and why it took 70 years and a very strong political will to basically abrogate it and reorganize the state. Tahir Sahib.
Yeah, I think Tariq Sahib has already answered those questions, but I'll just add few more lines. Absolutely, Indian governments in the past had no will to scrap Articles 370 and 35A. That is a simple explanation to this question. And the other thing also addressed by Tariq ji very well, that until unless Hindus shy away from their identity, this matter would not be taken care by Hindus. Vidya ji, as you mentioned, things are changing. I understand and I agree with you to some extent, but it's just Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his close people. But still, I can see the environment of shyness in Indian culture in terms of acknowledging and accepting their own identity, in terms of having enough encouragement to further their agenda. So that's the kind of a challenge I must say my Bharati fellows are facing even today. So, I mean, Indians are blessed to have Prime Minister Narendra Modi, absolutely. But sometime, as I'll quote again Tariq ji says over and over, and he says rightly, that most Indians with their kind of a shyness behavior do not deserve to have a Prime Minister like Narendra Modi. We Bharati are failed to have our own narrative, not just outside Bharat, even within Bharat. We cannot present our narrative, in fact. So these are the facts behind those realities that took so long Indians to scrap Articles 35A and 370. We are proud of what Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his close allies are doing, but there is still need of doing so much in terms of creating that environment, in terms of scrapping that shyness. Scrapping Article 370 and 35A is not enough. We need to scrap our shyness in terms of owning ourselves, in terms of having our voice, on the world platform.
Very well.
Thank you, Taji. The youngest and the most vibrant speaker on this panel is my friend Daniel Bodman, who was born in a Jewish family, and he's the voice of Canadian Anti-Semitism Education Foundation. He shares my pain as a displaced person from the land of his ancestors, and he has been very supportive of our cause, and he has given and helped us with many platforms within the Jewish community who have acknowledged the genocide of Kashmiri Hindus from their ancestral land. And Dan, tell us, why should Canada be concerned about the terror machinery active in Kashmir on the behest of Pakistani military and the puppet governments? And what impact you see of that extension in this part of the world, which we call our homes now? Dan.
All right, thank you very much for having me. So there's actually a few different angles I come at this from. As you said, there is my sort of Jewish element. So I understand the Kashmiri issue and sort of it is similar to the Israel issue. And you and I had spoken about that to the Jewish and Hindu communities and connected those issues well. But these issues are actually very, very important for Canada and the West for a few reasons. And the number one reason is, okay, you could say, one, truth is important. And, it is a moral imperative for us to understand the multiple genocides committed against the Kashmiri Pandits and sort of empathize and understand the truth of the matter. Because the threat to Canada here, or the threat to America, is these issues, the Kashmiri issue, have been used as an excuse to radicalize the youth in our society. And this is one of the red flags that the Jewish community has tried to raise for years around.
You mean the Muslim youth?
Sorry? Muslim youth mostly.
Yes.
But it's mostly Muslim youth, but there is a sort of a radical left that this also works on. And I'll just give you a stark example for Americans. We all remember the Boston bombing. The mosque that the Tsarnaev brothers went to, for years, the Jewish community, and I know the Lawfare Project, was raising concerns about those mosques over anti-Semitism because they were supporting Hamas. And everyone was just saying, oh, no, that's just Palestinian human rights. And they were saying, no, Hamas is legitimately genocidal. And then everyone kind of ignored that. Then when the Tsarnaev brothers got radicalized by that rhetoric, they didn't just kill Jews. It was the Boston bombing. Because the way you radicalize here is, most Muslim youth or even youth growing up in Canada, America, you're not going to win them over by saying, hey there, Fatima, want to come support the jihad? No, that doesn't work, right? What works is, hey there, Fatima, do you want to hear about Palestinian human rights and the rights of Palestinians? Because that sounds nice. So when you get into these groups, and then, right, if you want to be this hardcore Palestinian human rights activist, well, then you have to come to reconcile the fact that all three Palestinian governments, right? You have Gaza, you have the West Bank. So the Gazan government and Hamas, openly genocidal against all Jews, like in their charter, death to all Jews wherever they are. The moderates, the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank, they have a program, we call it Pay for Slay, where they financially reward you for committing a terrorist attack against a Jew or trying. So what happens is the radicalization, and this is the same way it's working with the Kashmiris now. This is also Kashmiri human rights.
They're paid for pelting stones at the security forces. It's in the same lines. Yeah,
it's the same. It's the exact same thing. So what you do is, when you justify, and you're this Palestinian human rights activist, and you're really anti-Israel, you're anti-Zionist, and even all your white left-wing friends are also anti-Zionist, and they're jumping on it, right? When you have to, when they're putting posters up of Leila Khalid, who's this famous Palestinian hero because she blew up a bus of 35 Israelis, killed 12 children, right? And this is Palestinian resistance. Well, you're never going to win the Muslim youth over by saying 9/11 was great, because they understand that. But if you can justify a suicide bombing on a bus in Israel as, hey, the reason why this is okay, suicide bombing is okay, is because the Palestinians are so oppressed. And then you go, okay, but I'm not a terrorist, but the Palestinians are so oppressed. Of course they suicide bomb. Of course the sadness causes suicide bombing. Side note, the amount of genocides the Kashmiri Hindus have suffered has not yielded any suicide bombings that I'm aware of. But once you start to go down this mental pathway that, okay, well, this suicide bombing is okay because Palestinians are oppressed, but then you have all these organizations that say, now the West is also Islamophobic. It is Islamophobic, it's anti-black racist, it's anti-trans, it's all these different things, and now you are oppressed. So it starts you down that pathway towards radicalization. It's a great foot in the door. And we really need to sort of be strong against that, because the two biggest lobbies in North America for the Kashmiri cause are basically fronts for Jamaat-e-Islami. For my Jewish friends, or the Jamaat-e-Islami is the Southeast Asian version of the Muslim Brotherhood. They have a terrorist group, Hezbollah Mujahideen, just like Muslim Brotherhood has Hamas. It's pretty much the same thing. Hezbollah Mujahideen's it's like, kill all the Hindus, caliphate in Kashmir. Now, the two biggest proxies, the ISNA, Islamic Society of North America, and then their radical subfaction, the Islamic Circle of North America. These are the ones that are out there pushing, the cause of the Kashmiri, independence. And we really need to sort of cut the legs out under these groups, because one, the ISNA, Canada, has 3 different terrorism funding violations by the Canadian Revenue Agency. And despite the fact that they have 3 terrorism funding violations, it is still a very popular hotspot for politicians to go. My good friend Khalid Rashid, MPP, and the more radical you get, the more likely he is to endorse your organization. And then he's bringing in Doug Ford and mainstreaming these organizations, even though they have 3 terrorism funding violations, right? And that's the legitimate front. Their radical subfaction, the ICNA, is even like on their own website. They're pro-sexual slavery. They link on their own website to scriptures where there are scholars who say, if you are a Muslim and you don't believe in sexual slavery, you're not a real Muslim. Those are the views of the ICNA. It is the public view of the ICNA that Islam is incompatible with democracy. That's their views. And these organizations gain legitimacy by talking about Kashmiri human rights. And we have to sort of cut this off at the pass. That's sort of one reason. So, I really liked a lot of the things that Tarek and Tahir brought up. The shyness of Indians, and also sort of the infiltration of the education system. These are problems that we are suffering here in Canada and America too. The infiltration of our political system and education system by radical ideologies. Marxists back in the day. Now you have Qatar funneling millions of dollars into the education system, Iran too, Saudi Arabia. So we have very similar problems. And in order to get over this, one, Canadians, Jewish community, we're very bad at sort of fighting our own battles. But a way we can sort of win over the Canadian people is we need to sort of teach them the truth about the Kashmiri situation, because unfortunately, and I was kind of like this a couple of years ago, we all know, India and Pakistan don't like each other and Kashmir is complicated. That's kind of the general gist we get. It wasn't until I sort of saw the propaganda coming out from the Linda Sarsours, the Pakistanis, these Islamist organizations, that I'm like, oh, that's the same thing they say about the Palestinians. Like, let me investigate this further. Because when people find out they have been lied to, it is a very great de-radicalizer. So getting the truth out about what the Kashmiri Pandits have actually suffered, the genocide in 1990, what really happened, because what the ISNA, the ICNA, Bernie Sanders, Linda Sarsour are doing is they're basically inverting reality. And we see this in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict as well. Whereas the real human rights abuse in Kashmir is the fact, not that, we all agree genocide is bad, but what's happening now is the real genocide, according to the ISNA, is Narendra Modi is now preventing the Islamists from murdering Hindus, and this is a genocide. This is the Palestinian claim as well. Like, they will openly say, what we want is death to all Jews by violent murder. And then the Israeli army says, no, and then this is oppression. All right, so you have this inversion of reality going on, which is, very dangerous, and we need to counter it. And the benefit of doing this is we really need to look on a wider level. Like, one, okay, to curb radicalism in our own societies is very important. I mean, no one wants radicalism in their own society, but going forward as a connected, globalized world, and realizing the threats we face from the OIC, Pakistan, now China, in order to sort of combat sort of the negative forces in the world, we're going to need the West and India, probably Japan, South Korea, to have sort of an alliance of democratic nations to be able to sort of push back. Because if we don't have, America, India, Canada, UK, Japan, all of us sort of connected on the same sort of in lockstep on certain issues in the world stage, we can be very, very easily undermined either economically or politically by, China and their allies, Russia. And, well, I mean, who is Russia ever an ally of? It's complicated to say, but we really do need India, one, if we're going to sort of, be able to make up for the sort of heavy manufacturing that the Chinese do, and the fact that, if the Chinese are bad actors in this on the global stage, and we're sort of economically dependent on them, that's a major security risk. And India, with its billions of people and building, economy and growing middle class, is really the only option we have to combat this. So we are going to need an alliance of the West and the democratic nations of the East going forward to be able to curb the security threat of China and all this. So I do see the Kashmir issue as very important as a way to sort of one, bring truth, de-radicalization, and also connection between the nations that will have to sort of fight against either Islamists, communists, or whatever radicals that come. So that's why I've been talking about this situation a lot over the last year, because I do see it's very, very important, not just obviously for India and Kashmiris, but it also will affect you in a Canadian university in some way. So that's what I've been saying for a year.
Thank you so much, Dan, for that very elaborate explanation. I mean, just for the the benefit of viewers, and as you said, in the same extension, we have seen terror funding for terror organizations like Hizbul Mujahideen being funded from Canadian mosques, and they coming under the CRA scandal. I mean, we have seen that all happening, and we are also seeing a lot of radical elements basically being supported by the local Pakistani governance, which basically works against India. And just for the benefit of viewers, I just want to elaborate on Dan that Kashmiri Hindus are the probably only people on the face of earth who have seen not just a genocide, but what we call a continuous genocide, starting from the 15th century onwards. For the last 500 years, we have been subjugated to genocide and basically ousting us from our own ancestral land for the 7th time in 1990.
But why do you say Kashmiri Hindus? What about Hindus of Sindh or Hindus of Punjab or Jain?
For that matter of fact, that entire area, I agree with you, Tariq sir.
The point is, unless and until it is non-sectarian and based on matter of principles, you will lose the argument. The issue is that people who invade other countries cannot be celebrated as their heroes. So Warsaw has no Hitler memorial. And you can't go to Haifa and look for General Rommel's copper statue. You won't find a street anywhere in Europe that would celebrate the Nazi Holocaust.
But we have everything.
No, just a second. That is what I'm saying. You've localized this into Kashmiri Hindus. You haven't. Suddenly bypass.
Just because we are celebrating, the Kashmir issue, that's the reason why. But otherwise,
I understand that. But since we are discussing, the issues are one of principles, whether it comes from someone deeply religious or an atheist communist is not a problem. India's Communist Party played a major role in fighting against British colonial rule. We cannot deny that. Even in Jammu Kashmir, CPI used to elect a couple of seats, if I remember, way back in the 70s. The Communist Party is, in fact, in India, one of the few parties that is right across the country. Every other party of the 5,000 parties is located in one corner. Somebody is connected with Maharashtra. The auntie from Bengal is just there based on the Muslim vote. Then you have people from Tamil Nadu who only speak about, in fact, nobody else can get elected there, the ADMK or DMK. The point is, if you cannot think big, you will have no way out of the ghetto in which you're stuck. I'll give you an example. The main threat to the West or the world comes from Pakistan's nuclear arsenal that is targeted at Israel and Europe, and yet you will never find an Israeli or an Italian or a German ever talk about the Pakistani nukes, because Pakistan knows how to give $25,000 in packages to every departing ambassador. You don't. Do you understand me? What's happening?
Yep.
Why did you demonetize? Because Pakistan was printing Indian currency, taking it to Dubai, changing into euros, and then sending it through Nepal and Bangladesh back into India. In Bihar, nobody was using 50 rupee notes because they were not sure. So if you dealt with just 1 rupee notes, you knew that Pakistan won't print 1 rupee notes. We are dealing with a military, industrial, nuclear complex that says we are targeting our missiles into Nicobar Islands. And you take the radius and it lands straight at Tel Aviv. But the missile is being produced and marketed as if they want to hit the Andaman Islands, which is the great threat to Pakistan. But you go to Israel and you go to any university, there's never been a study about Pakistan in the last 70 years. I went to every campus. They didn't know what was Pakistan.
The looming threat.
Looming threat. Even the exiles from Mr. Shiransky. I said, how can you not read this? Like, what is wrong with you? The missile is pointed at you and you're targeting Iran. Why? Because the Iranian Jews who never came to Israel because they were in the upper class are not only anti-Arab in a racist way, but are anti-Muslim as well. So Iran, they made Iran the bogeyman while allowing Pakistan to build the nukes. If Iran's nukes, then how the hell does Pakistan has 200 nukes pointed at India and Israel?
So I can give you the from the Israeli point of view. I think what they feel is Iran is definitely more of a major immediate threat to them because because they think that they could. I mean, it might be false reasoning, but the reasoning here is probably they feel like India can take care of Pakistan, and they can, and then Pakistan would be fixated on India, and they do. And I do kind of think one. And it's also the thing of Pakistan has the nukes, so you can't stop them, whereas Iran is in the process of getting them. And I mean, they also openly say they want to use.
You think Pakistan will not sell the nukes to Iran?
I do. I think Pakistan is the greatest geopolitical threat in the world right now because of what you're saying.
Are we talking about anything else other than the real problem? The issue is not about Kashmiri Hindus or displaced Jews or the Holocaust. Right now is the very existence of human civilization on Earth. And there is one military industrial nuclear complex that is dedicated to the destruction of humanity because that is the religious goal of every Muslim. Roze Qayamat. Till everything is destroyed. Till these bizarre people will emerge from Earth, destroy everything. And this is a transit lounge from where we will take flights to paradise.
Your life starts after death.
Life starts after death. I don't think those are the Hindus, which, by the way, in our language are the Hanud and the Yahud. And both of you guys don't know this. But our curses fall on the Hanud and the Yahud. Except the problem is neither the Hanud, which is Hindu, or the Yahud, which is Jews, know that we reference to both of them in a poetry sense. Right, Tahir Sahab?
Yes, sir. Yeah, you are right.
Hanud or Yahud? Neither
Yeah, I mean,
Hindus know nor Jews know this.
Tariq Sahab, in Kashmir, whenever there used to be riots, they used to invoke Allah to decimate the seed of Hindus. That was like a very common thing.
That is our belief, okay? You can't change Islam. You have to live with it, and you cannot deport a quarter of a billion people, 300 million. Where will they go? You need to understand that the issue is for bringing them back to their senses. Look what happened where the Palestinians did not pursue what was on the table and tried to outdo each other in competition. So the Hamas people killed all the Palestinian Authority guys, threw them from rooftops. More Arabs have killed Arabs than Israel could ever dream of, if Israel's point was to kill Arabs, because 20% of Israelis are Arab.
True.
Israel can't even market that. Arabic is a national language of Israel.
The great irony, Tariq has pointed out here, for all the Jews control the media talk, we are the worst at marketing ourselves, getting our media message out there. We are excellent at digging holes and putting our head in the sand and putting our heads inside of them.
Some of the most anti-Israel people in Canada are Jews today. You know them. I know them.
My younger brother used to date one of them.
Exactly, okay? On the same league then. We are on the same league, basically.
No, the point. No. Indians are lazy. Israelis are self-destructing. Indians just want to have biryani and go to sleep and ask the wife to make some more.
End result is the same.
End result is that one tiny Israel is fighting 14 states, and one huge India can't do anything about a tiny twit hole of a country that is poking nuclear missiles all over the world. They sold Balochistan to China. When Balochistan wanted to join India, you leaked the news to the Pakistan army, and Pakistan army advanced and took over. Well, if I went back and I met these
and I believe that the current regime is trying to change that history.
I know, but the current regime needs to get the conscience, the culture of Indians. I want Indians to stop every rich person. I don't want, I've told them publicly, this humiliation of touching each other's feet, keep it for your dad. I don't want to bend over for anyone, because I don't see anything in the last 1,000 years that Indians have done except slavery. Every invader from central Turkestan came and butchered us, and then ended up by cutting the limbs of India. At least Israel is where it is. Israel accepted 1948, where Jerusalem was an international city. Israel accepted the frontier in 56, when the Western Wall, the temple was in Jordan's hand. Israel has bent over backward to do everything. Now they've got Netanyahu saying, oh, we are actually against Netanyahu. You were against everyone. Labour Party, Sephardic.
So I think Tariq has actually brought up a very, very good point for both Israel and Kashmir here, and this is where I think, and I know Vidya and I have talked about this, but these submissive policies, giving in to people who are openly sort of genocidal against you, do not work. And Israel was founded on very socialist left-wing policies. We all know the kibbutzes, and the left in Israel is essentially dead now. The Labour Party is dead because Israel has literally tried every single one of your bleeding heart ideas. They're not bleeding heart ideas.
They're not bleeding heart ideas. They were sensible ideas put forward on the table by Israel in good faith by as great a man as General, the 1967 hero with the
Moshe Dayan.
Moshe Dayan.
So here's a great example. So I'll give you the Moshe Dayan did. So Moshe Dayan defeats 13 different armies in 6 days with an eye patch. It's very awesome. Now, this is when Israel sort of takes back the Jerusalem. They win the territory. Now, there's two things here that we should learn a lesson from. They offer right after the war complete return of all conquered territories in exchange for a peace deal.
Yes.
For a peace deal, we'll give everything back. The Arab countries meet in Khartoum. No peace, no recognition, no negotiation. That's the thing. No peace. We're not even going to recognize you exist. But here's the key thing.
No, you control the media, so
yeah, we can. So the other thing they did is the holiest site in Judaism. Like our religion is centered around Israel and specifically the temple in Jerusalem, which is the Al-Aqsa Mosque. We gave the Al-Aqsa Mosque to be moderated and run by the Islamic Waqf of Jordan. So you're not allowed. Jews are not allowed to pray on their holiest site in Israel. The Israeli police will arrest you if you're a Jew praying on the Temple Mount.
Okay,
so
that's the mistake you made.
Exactly. It's a huge mistake because the number one propaganda tool that Hamas and the Palestinian Authority use is suicide bombings is the Jews are coming for the Al-Aqsa Mosque. The number one terrorist brigade is the Al-Aqsa Brigade. And this propaganda, you see it on the streets of Toronto every year during Al-Quds Day. We got to protect the Al-Aqsa Mosque from the Jews. And it's like, we gave it to you. And the other thing is, when Palestinians started fleeing from the evil Jews in 1967, Moshe Dayan sent buses to the Palestinians in the West Bank to bring them back, saying, don't worry, we're going to negotiate. There's going to be peace. Just accept the peace deal.
Dan, that's what I'm appealing to.
Exactly. And I'm agreeing with you.
Okay. So Moshe Dayan's first reactions after winning the war was that the Arabs, let the Arabs not think we are their enemies. So my background is from the left, so I understand. And in the end, if you do not fight with good faith and good intentions with common decency, you will lose the propaganda battle. How do you think the Islamists are winning? By every member of parliament having a hijab. You look at the Toronto Star, there's a hijab on every page. Every issue today is done by, black empowerment, hijabi arises. Oh, women's empowerment, there's a woman who's. You will never see a Hindu or a Jew who has come, Jews come from, say, Crimea or someplace who settled over here, Russian. He will not be recognized. Bengali Hindu who's run away from the wicked women of Calcutta, they will never be given a chance. But because they allied themselves with the left, and the left after 1990 became vulnerable and clueless as to what to do, how to study economics in the new world, they became irrelevant. That is why we are today seeing a complete vacuum in more people becoming billionaires in one day in America, and then relying on the state to fund $1 trillion of free money. We don't discuss these things, but they will come to haunt us. We have to be firm in how we defend the truth and absolutely determination. But in confronting the wicked enemy, we have to be smart. We have to be smart. We cannot win this unless and until we are seen as people on the right side. And usually people on the right are assumed to be people on the left. This is the paradox we are facing. You bring out 20 Dalits and they are the authentic voice. You bring out 2 Brahmins, case closed.
Tariq Saab, it's all about narrative. I mean, that's what.
And how do we take this?
Exactly.
We have truth on our side. We don't have, as far as the Indians, we don't have courage. As far as the Jews, they don't know how to stop undermining each other. But some of the major groups, some of the major anti-Israeli groups today operating are Jews. For the Palestinians, they don't have to do anything. They're sitting and relaxing.
So there is a lot of takeaway basically today. And on the same lines, Tariq Saab, as I said, when Kashmiris, I'm back to that point because we are celebrating, the abrogation of Article 370. So when we left 30 years back, we were completely unsung. Nobody cared for us. We were thinking probably we were in a fool's paradise in 1990 that the minuscule minority of Kashmir has left.
Who betrayed you?
our own people.
Indians, right?
Indians. I mean,
Absolutely.
we were basically like not even a cog in the wheel in 1990.
Nobody in Bihar knew that you
Not
had
even
been thrown
today.
out.
Tariq
You
Saab,
became
even today.
refugees. It's
Even
as compared, for example, I'll make a comparison as if there were Jews going from Haifa to say somewhere in the Negev and saying, "We are refugees," and the local Bedouin saying, "Who the hell are you? I don't care."
exactly. I mean, I'll tell you something very personal about it. Like, I mean, Colonel Tej Tikku is one of our leaders, and he has written a book on the Kashmir and the genocide happened there. Now he's an army man, and who else other than army might be knowing what the ground realities are?
Yeah, yeah.
Now his own colleagues had basically pointed out to him, in early 90s. Well, I mean, in summer you must be going. That means even some of the army people who are not at the helm of affairs there, even they don't know what's happening there. Now, you were talking about the Biharis, like even 30 years after, majority of the Indians do not know that what happened to the Kashmiri Hindus, for that matter of fact. So that's the reason why, in the last 10, 11 years, and with people like you and Tahir Bhai, we have basically been able to, talk about like what happened there and like, what's happening over there. It's not just that something happened, but it's continuously happening.
I wish
So,
Tom was here. He would have exposed how deep the Pakistani racket
absolutely.
has sneaked in. We should do some show
Absolutely.
with him.
So there's the next question, which I was actually expected to ask from Tom. Taji, you remember when we celebrated the 30 years of our forced exile and our Holocaust Day on January 19th? If you
Right.
remember, Tom Keegan basically pointed out that we Kashmiri Hindus should not be very upbeat about like returning to our homeland so soon. I mean, I didn't like basically his observation, but deep inside, I knew that he's telling the truth. So tell me, why do what was his thinking that, why is not going to happen so soon?
It's not a very easy thing for pundits to go back, immediately because the environment is not favorable yet. It's very simple. You know better than me, Vidya. If you like to go back to Srinagar, I don't think so you would feel safe going to Srinagar. Though the things are changing, but the environment created by Islamists for the past during the past 70 years cannot be changed in 1 year. So, I mean, it is very difficult for Hindus to settle in those pockets where Islamization exists. I understand that terrorism virus come from Pakistan, and I mean it's not that dangerous yet. But in the environment of Islamization is there. So
All over India.
True.
sorry,
Tariq
It's
Saab,
all over India.
all over India.
all over the India. I
Tariq Saab,
agree.
we are basically now starting the Q&A session. Basically, there is a question on Facebook by Deepak Razdan. Deepak is basically pointing out to the fact that the previous governments, the UPA governments and all, tried many a times to basically settle the displaced Kashmiri Hindus and Sikhs and Bauds back in Kashmir. And they were like failed attempts many a times, like they were basically kicked out back again. Their like little shanties were basically burned down by the radicals over there. And now the point of basically going back to what we call the Garwapsi or the homecoming is again, coming back into the force. Now, Deepak Razan is saying that we have not basically understood the whole game. Or the government of India is not understanding the point. Now, we don't want to
What
basically
is
go
it?
back to the question is, I mean, is it wise basically go back to the same places where we left and become sitting ducks? So what Kashmiri Hindus are basically asking for a separate land under a union territory status, kind of a secure zone or what we call a smart city. Is that a good idea? Or it is basically more of a secular idea that we go back to where we were ousted from. But then what about the congeniality? What about basically the security of those people who will be probably forced by the government of India to go back where they came from? I mean, I belong to a place, in downtown Srinagar. where probably there are like 10 Hindu families among 90 Muslim families. So I will be sitting
It
duck.
will be helpful if you just kept the question.
The question is, should we basically go back where we came from, or should we have a separate state? Because enough of 7 exoduses, we don't want to basically trust those people again.
There's all of India for you to settle down, and you can go back. The point is, there's everything one can learn from the Jewish experience. You know that this Qurbani that we just held yesterday all over India with hundreds of thousands of, you know, that word is a Jewish word. Qurbani is what they did I think it was 2 AC when 2 AD when it stopped. This is the Jewish tradition. But do you think anybody knows about that? You've got to understand how many times the temple was destroyed, how many came back. This Israel is, I'm very pro-Palestinian myself, and I will clarify one point. Dan, just for I'm digressing, but Laila Khalid represented everything that was rotten in the Islamist sense of the word. 100 Laila Khalids would still be someone you could talk to compared to one Hamas person who believes that horses can fly and paradise is there and there are virgins there. Laila Khalid did not believe. She was a Marxist. So one needs to deal with it. I remember talking to a Jewish professor. He said, at least the secular Palestinian left, we could talk to them. The monsters we released in Gaza of Yassin and all those people, they really are not on earth. So
there is no compromise with Hamas. Hamas
I know.
We're going to take over the world, and you can't deal with that.
But you've never been able to prove to the world that the worst enemies of Muslims are Hamas.
Exactly. And you did a great job of illustrating the when Gaza had its first elections. You know, after Hamas won, they massacred Fatah. Yeah. The biggest massacre in Palestinian history is Hamas in Gaza massacring Fatah before they started launching rockets at Israel. And I'm going to try to adjust the question about settling down. I'll give you the Jewish thing. If you want to return, or if you want to live anywhere, if you want to like learn from the Israel experience, there's a lot of. I mean, the Mandate for Palestine. Remember, Mandate for Palestine actually included both modern-day Israel and Jordan, and then the Jews were kicked out of Jordan and forced to Israel. Like the Western Palestine, which is now Israel, was a barren wasteland. 90% of it, as of 1920, was not even. No one lived there. It was just the desert. So the Jews actually had to go. If you look at what Tel Aviv started as, it's literally sand, and we built that up. And even when we didn't displace anyone like the narrative says, even when it was just Jews going to a pile of sand and building a city out of nothing, that is still under international law, according to radicals, illegal. So whatever you do when it comes to sort of Islamic radicals, if you want to settle somewhere, if you want to sort of take back, you're going to have to fight for it. And that's the reality of it. So if Kashmiris want to return to Kashmir, like I believe they have the right to, but if they do, they will have to defend themselves, and they'll have to defend themselves both physically, and they'll have to defend themselves in terms of the media to sort of raise their cause and stand their ground. And don't expect the Americans to come help you. Don't expect the Europeans to ever care about your issues. Like India's got to understand, and the Kashmiris have to understand, and the Hindus have to understand. If you want this, and the Islamic radicals don't want you to have it, you're going to have to fight to keep it.
So I concluded the fact that, I mean, we don't want to basically go back to those ghettos, but we should basically create like a city, within Kashmir where we are able to defend ourselves. Now, there's another question coming from Sudhir Dar from India. He's asking from Tarji. Tarji, we were always talking about, like, I have always been supporting the fact that population balance is a very effective tool. Like, when the radicals basically become like, kind of neutralized by numbers, they stop the subversive activities. Now we have seen in the last like 1 month or more, 25,000 domicile certificates have been basically given to army officials and many Indians in Kashmir. Mm-hmm. Now, do you see it as a trend happening in coming years where basically the population of Kashmir will become completely kind of neutralized? Like at least, the non-Muslim population will be like around between 20-25%, so that the majority are neutralized in some way?
It's almost the same question you posed earlier. That I mean, in face of the fear Hindus feel in Wadi, particularly in Kashmir Valley. So should Hindus have their own kind of a state? I do not agree with it, because then that means you are giving Kashmir in the hands of Islamists. When we talk about population balance, I don't know what does that exactly mean. Now, Kashmir, Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh are two union territories. They were part of India. They are part of India. There should be industries. There should be businesses, and the people who are going from Bihar to Punjab, they should be encouraged to go to Kashmir. I mean, like,
what is population balance? Like, if a Bihari from Bihar and a Punjabi from Punjab goes to Kashmir.
This is seriously wrong. This is the problem with Indians. The guy who's asked that question is obviously not an Indian. The Facebook person who asked this question is the typical Indian who's not an Indian.
But what is the solution then? Like, I mean, should we allow?
Are we going to judge people by the skin tone of us or what race we belong to?
No, anybody from India, like, who's not a Kashmiri, should be allowed to settle in Kashmir.
Why not? Where are people from Kerala living? Why are Marathas living?
Why didn't have any rights before? They didn't. I mean, after the abrogation of Article 370, they have been given rights. Like, when that the Kashmiri Hindus who migrated from Pakistan have been waiting for the last 70 years for rights.
Yeah, but they've got it. So now, that's what a country is.
There is a caveat to that. You need to be staying there for 15 years, and it's not straightforward, actually.
Doesn't matter. For goodness sake, that's what I'm saying. India's biggest problem is Indians. You look at everything in compartments, and you fulfill the stereotype that is that Indians just talk, and when it comes to action, there will be none. Like, I can promise you today, at 1 o'clock, there will be no Indian there. I can bet.
I will be there. I'm a proud Indo-Canadian. I'll be there.
There will be Tibetans. There will be people exiled from various parts. I've even seen Manipuris over there. The typical Indian is so, like, I'm serious, man.
It's changing, Tariq Saab. You will agree to me. It is changing.
No, it's not. The Indian mindset is not changing. One man is changing. Not. Can you imagine that you are running Bollywood by authorizing the Pakistan intelligence services to operate your financial center? Your top guns are on payroll. Gangsters of India live in Karachi, and you can't eliminate them in a city where for 50,000 rupees, anybody can eliminate anyone. You get attacked in Bombay, and what do? You sit back and say, oh, please tell us, give us proof. You think that if Tel Aviv was attacked like...
this time we didn't ask for the proof. We went inside and
No. You still left behind a pilot who was drinking Pakistani tea and became a TV commercial where he said, chai kaisi hai? And the pilot said, the tea is very good in Pakistan. You made a joke out of it. You don't even have the guts to say Pakistan is a terrorist state and I will shut Wagah border.
So someone who can say Pakistan is a terrorist state, I think there's a great way to sort of reframe these questions and get at what we're going to here, because if any country fits the geopolitical description of a sleeping giant, that would be India, right? And we've talked about how India is quite asleep at the wheel. And I love him for it because it reminds me of Canada. It reminds me of the Jewish community. So I empathize. I guess I think a productive line of discussion here is, how do we wake the sleeping giant? Like, what is the pathway to sort of waking up India on this issue? Because, if India becomes awake and sort of stands up for himself, this is, that's 1 billion people that can be brought
more Tariq Fatas. We need more Tariq Fatas and Tariq Muraz.
No, I would come. I'm 71 now. I can come. But I'm telling you that even, by the way, in Israel, there is a city called Rehma, if Daniel, if you know that, where the Bani Israeli of Bombay and Karachi live. But they too want to shy off being known as Indians, except when Abba Iban comes, and because they play cricket together and he was a cricket player, and oh, we are Bani Israeli. Why don't you talk about India? They don't even run Indian restaurants.
Yeah.
I'm serious. You have to risk getting a punch in your face. There were 300 people who attacked me in the Urdu reading festival in Delhi. You remember that? It was filmed. I did not move. They were beating me with sticks, and cops arrested me. I dug my iron chair in the wet sand. I said, "Go F yourself. I'm not going home today." 3 hours. They beat me and they hit me and they run away. I didn't call any 911. My greatest wish was, if I die today, these assholes, pardon my language, are going to get the hell. And I told them, I said, I'm waiting for a hockey stick to hit my head. You will. Nobody is ready to do that. There is no Bhagat Singh anymore.
Yeah, we are distinctly, we're lacking courage as a society. I mean,
Yeah,
we've been out.
You nailed it, Dan. Honestly.
Well, I mean, I agree with Tariq Saab and I agree with Dan, but I mean, I believe like we have been in a slumber for good 65 years. India as a country has woken up. We have a great leader, and in just a short span of 6 years, he has done commendable decisions, probably which no other political party had the will or the inclination to basically take up. Now, from whether it is the political decisions, whether it is basically going and giving back to the people who are basically creating ruckus in our country, or to the education policy or the world media or the foreign policy, a lot of things are changing. So with this, I thank you, gentlemen, very much. And I want to tell all of you and the the world at large, people who are watching us at this moment, that Global Kashmiri Pandit Diaspora will be leading a worldwide commemoration with a series of events in India and the several parts of the world for this whole week to celebrate the abrogation of Article 370 and changing the status quo of Jammu Kashmir. I mean, this was, trust me, like my dad is 79. And he will always say that will there be a day when I will basically, look forward to go back on my own conditions. We don't know when it's going to happen, but at least the door is opened. So, Tariq Sahab, you're saying something.
I was just saying, I'm giving you a thumb.
Absolutely. So the door is open. Today we also celebrate the sacrifice of one of our brothers, Sushil Amma. He was like an army man who sacrificed for the cause of the nation. So as a Kashmiri Hindu, I'm very upbeat about it. I'm proud of basically being an Indo-Canadian.
One last question.
Stop.
Why is there no woman on this panel?
You're right. I mean, we will definitely have one more session.
अगर औरत ना आई ना अगली बारी मैं नहीं आना है थे.
So next time we'll invite Salma Atulajan.
मैं फिर लैला खालिद भी ले आना है थे.
No, we do have, within the community, very
leaders. I'll get Laila Khalid to come here.
Yeah, we'll have our KOC president next time on the panel. Thank you so very much. There are a few questions coming up again. I mean, if time permits, I'll ask the last question to Tarbhai. Tarbhai, what is our stand, or what should be the stand of Jammu Kashmir, or for that matter of government of India, on the part of Aksai Chin and the part which is with Pakistan? How do you see we handling it with China standing tall behind Pakistan?
It doesn't matter because China and Pakistan alliance is not a secret. Now China is on board with Iran's agenda as well. I mean, we are repeating things, and I'll repeat it again, that as Indians, we have to stand firm against any bully. Either it comes from Pakistan or it comes from China. We were talking about Hindus settling in Kashmir. I'll just connect my answer to this thing. I mean, here in Canada or in European Union or in the United States, we come here and within a couple of months we become part of the society. And no one says there is a population kind of a imbalance.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a human society. So Kashmir is an integral part of India. So why Indians shy from settling down in Kashmir? Now there are circumstances after this abrogation Article 370 and 35A. So, I mean, there shouldn't be any hesitation in terms of settling down there, and there shouldn't be any hesitation to counter Pakistan and China. I mean, Pakistan has handed over that sky chain to China. Now it's a history. Now we have to counter that thing. Pakistan will do whatever works for their evil agenda. We have to do whatever works for us. It's so simple.
Yeah, I mean, within the democratic framework and the global policies, we can't basically stoop as low as Pakistan. So
No,
thank you.
you
Gentlemen.
might you have to do what undermines the enemy. Don't hide behind wisdom.
I regret basically that we can basically connect to Dr. Lamba and Tom Quiggin. Probably next time I take this opportunity to thank Dream TV USA, the entire team of GKPD, and the entire team of ICKF for giving me an opportunity to talk about this. And thank you so much for celebrating with us the abrogation of this article and paving a door for the displaced people from their own land. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks. Namaskar.